the challenges of trying to get a team to show up every week. I can't even imagine what that's like. Almost impossible, right? To bring your fastball every week. Can you just for fans maybe talk a little bit about you're playing Texas, the whole world is watching.
Right.
The guy's got some juice during the week, but it's hard to maintain that every week. But yet, as an outsider watching you guys, you're the one team that seems to be the same every single week. Can you talk about the challenges of that and how do you pull it off? How do you do it?
Well, um, I think the first thing is, it has to be about the routine of the week and making sure that you're focusing on your process and your routine. I think the minute you start to change things, you start to change things as coaches, as players in your preparation based on who you're playing, then you can set yourself up for a lot of ups and downs. And that's one thing that, to me, I've really tried to, every year you try to learn more and more. And at Ohio State, there's certain games that you're expected to win by a certain margin, and then you have these other games that are a little bit more of matchup games. And I think the easy thing to do is to, the ones you circle is like all of a sudden you start to ramp things up, and that's something that I've tried to really learn year in and year out to continue to keep the routine, and then just make sure that you're focused on your process. But then you have to know your opponent. And I think as we've learned last year, a lot of times it's going to come down to matchups. As we start to project what the end of the season is going to look like, you look at all these different teams across the country, kind of like in the NFL. A lot of it comes down to your matchups, and then what are you willing to do or able to do as a team to adjust and adapt in order to attack what you're seeing schematically or personnel wise. So I think all those things come into play, and I think the other part of it is talking to your team about being mature, like growing up and being a veteran team emotionally, mentally, taking care of your body so physically you can bring it every single week. And there's a seriousness about that you have to understand that every time you go on the field, you're putting it on the line, you're putting your season on the line. And each week, especially in conference right now, I know we talk about it here, is that we're playing for a chance to get to Indianapolis. We haven't been there in a little while, so we need to get there. And every time you're playing, if you don't win that game, you put yourself at risk of getting to Indianapolis. So understanding what's on the table and being consistent, I think, is important.
Coach, it feels like we've moved, not we, but as you look now, every single week, we're talking about another coach getting fired. Is is there something in the recruiting cycle, in the transfer portal, something that is making us move to this place where people are jumping in mid-season and firing coaches? Why is that so prevalent? It seems like more this year than we've ever seen before.
I don't have the answer to that, but I do know that anytime you make a change, there's a lot of things that have to go into play, and it takes time. And the first thing
Okay.
is you have to hit it right with your staff, and then you have to hit it right with the recruits, and then you have to bring in recruits that can put your culture together. And even when you put all those things in, you still may have injuries, you still may have mistakes along the way,
Okay.
and that takes time, which nobody wants to hear. And I get it. And guys are going to make their decisions, and there's a lot of pressure on administrators and athletic directors to get it right. And when you fire somebody, you got to go figure out, like, are you going to go hire somebody that's better than the one you got? And I
Right.
think that's not easy to do. And I get it more than anybody. We're at a place where you got to win every game, but sometimes working through those difficult times and hanging in there, even though there's a lot of pressure coming from the outside, is the best thing to do. I think it's our job as coaches to make sure that we explain what the plan is moving forward to correct the issues, so that everybody within the administration is on the same page and can say, okay, he has a plan for how he's going to get these things fixed, whatever those things might be. And I think it's the job of the administration to support the coach and to let them know that we have your back, even though we expect to win X number of games and this is our expectation. But I do think it's our job to make sure we're finding what the problems are, getting them addressed, and then putting a plan moving forward on how we're going to get them addressed. But all that to be said, yeah, we're in a day and age where you look at the NFL. I mean, it seems like every year or two, a lot of these organizations are flipping coaches over, and I guess some of
Yeah.
them work out, but many of them are more unstable or unstable than they've ever been. So I think there's no, science to it all. And, we're all still working to, try to do everything we can to, figure out what's next and what the answers are.
What do you think you learned after last year, the Michigan game, the anguish, the frustration? I was there at senior tackle. You and I spoke. I could see a look in your eye. I could see a look in Trevion Henderson's eye, and all those seniors. This team's about to do something unique, and then you guys make it run. What did you take away? There were some really difficult moments there for you and your family, and then to make that run, to stand on top of that mountain. How's that help you grow as a coach and prepare for this year, next year, and beyond?
Yeah, well, you learn every year, you grow every year, you do things well, you make mistakes, and then ultimately though, like I kind of it's like being the father or being a husband where you have a family, and you got to do the best you can to do what's right. And when you have bad moments, you got to admit when you're wrong. You got to identify the things that are wrong, get them fixed, and then go from there. And I do think you learn a lot about how the season plays out. You learn about how you want to bring your team along. And then we talked about earlier, like sometimes like with these matchups, not every game's the same. Every game's different, and how you're trying to attack guys and making sure you're doing what's right to put your guys in a situation to be successful. And that's everybody's job. But I think, when you see some of these young people who go through adversity and use that as a way to build up this like callousness, this toughness, this just, determination to win games, like it's an opportunity. And I think making sure they understand that, because as you get older, you realize like all this noise and pressure on the outside is just an opportunity to build up a toughness about your team. As long as you're not letting it seep into the building and affect everybody in the building, and as long as you have alignment. And that's why the off season is so important. So when the storms hit, you're strong. But yeah, to say those moments were easy, they weren't. I mean, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the people that are around you, and it makes the journey even that more enjoyable when you finish the way we did.
That's awesome. It's a great way to look at it. If you could change one thing in this NIL portal world, everybody off season, there's so much discussion, debate, just crap.
Yeah.
If you could change one or two things, living it every day, what would you tweak?
Yeah, I wish it was one thing, but I feel like in order for us to even get there, we have to come up with a structure where, in my opinion, there's 3 commissioners, which just like in the government, there's checks and balances. I think if you have 1, it's no good. I think you need to have 3. And they're the ones that make the decisions on the rules, on the calendar, on everything. I think until we do that, we are going to constantly feel the way we do right now, because there's just so many things to me that need to get addressed. The calendar is way out of whack. Like how things go, like, we're going to have a one-time transfer window in January, yet the contracts go from summer to summer. That doesn't mean you're trying to make decisions on your team and you're still playing, in the playoffs. And then whichever team, I mean, I tried to say this and nobody listened. Whoever the teams are that are playing in the national championship game are going to be very, very upset, because their guys, after the portal's closed, they're going to be 5 days where anybody in the country can pick their roster apart, and they can't replace them. Yeah. They can't replace them. There's no chance to replace them. When are they going to replace them? There's no more transfer portal. So they could lose 5, just like we lost, I think, 7 or 8, 9 guys. And we at least had the portal in the spring. Once they're gone, you have no chance to. What do you do? And I tried to explain this and nobody listened. And okay. But, all of those things, like there's just a lot. And then some of the people that are influencing and making decisions, I don't think have thought it through from everybody's point of view. And I think, to be fair, it's hard when you have people who are coming from different parts of the country, different conferences, different size schools, and to try to bring everybody together to make a single decision. That is the biggest challenge. But we all know in this world of roster building, whether it's the NIL, the revenue and salary cap, like right now it's soft. So until we make this more structured, there's still going to be this gray area where people are upset. and then obviously the transfer portal. So it's really like the NFL in the fact that, you have your team that you're trying to retain, and then you have the free agency. And, we do have a model. It's the NFL. And I think the more that we look into that model, that we can use some of those attributes to help our process right now. But until we put the structure together, I think, we're going to always be, in a place where there's just a lot of hard feelings.